right, there's those guys. Let's get Facebook going here. Sometimes those images don't show up on the Facebook side, so I got to make sure I'm clicking the right one there on my side. Like, what's going on? All right, there we go. Welcome in, welcome in. It is time for an episode of Broncos for Breakfast. I am Nick Kendall and joined by Scott Kennedy. Scott, welcome to hour 2 of our show. How you doing? How's your Wednesday? Any fun plans coming up?
Spring game tomorrow. I'm not excited about fall football when you've got a super fast center field playing baseball player who weighs 170 pounds and they put him at defensive at nose guard in a 3.
He's tall too, right? Like
he's
leverage.
5'10". The thing is, he's been 5'10" since he was 11, so he was tall. Now not so much. But it's like tomorrow I'm like, all right, let's just not get him squashed, please. It's like, dude, you did too good in the weight room, and they don't ever run sprints. They don't know you're fast.
Yeah, and you're 6'3", right? 6'2".
I'm 6'1". Yeah, I'm 6'1".
6'1". Okay, I'm pushing 6 foot, 6'1", right around there. So I have a buddy who says I'm 6'1" because he's like a half inch shorter than me. He's like, no, you're definitely over 6 foot.
You're 6'2" at least.
Yeah, it's like I don't know, man. I don't know. But
the first time I went to a high school combine, I came back and measured myself. I'm like, did I get taller? And like, nope, these kids are just full of beans.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because every one of them was taller than I'm 6'2", and I'm looking them in the eye. I'm like, all right, well, maybe I'm 6'2". Yeah, I'm not.
No.
Neither are you. Yeah.
Stretching out a bit. Well, welcome in, folks. We're going to talk a little bit about just where things are at on the depth chart. Some thoughts of the position battles so far. Some guys that might be in, some guys that might be out. And let's say hello to folks coming in and hanging out. We got Jeremy first saying, morning, boys. I'm going to go out on a limb and say Franklin makes it, and there's a chance Vele takes Tim Patrick's spot. So Tim Patrick not making the roster. That is a limb, given what we saw as far as the snap distribution. But things can be in motion there. There has been, at least, it could be BS, right? But there's been a little bit of smoke of maybe Sutton the 49ers have some interest in Sutton if they create a wide receiver hole by moving Brandon Ayuk. So we'll see there. Given how Denver restructured Sutton's contract, it doesn't really impact the dead cap wise. It's not like Denver all of a sudden is going to be on the hook and take a massive dead cap hit. It's more of an incentive based additions to his contract. So I wouldn't want to get rid of Sutton, because he's he's the only guy that I trust out of every single weapon that you have on offense. And if you're trying to create a good environment for a rookie quarterback, you want trustworthy pass catchers out there. But there at least has been some Sutton watch recently. So I think Tim Patrick's safe, but Sutton is the one it's interesting. There's a tiny bit of smoke right now.
Yeah, that is interesting. And again, the base salary is still the same. I think they probably inched up a little bit on some of the guaranteed money, but the base is still the same. So when you talk about the dead cap of 9.6, that's if you cut him. If you get somebody to take on a lot of that salary, you might have to eat some of it. Again, why would I pay Cortland Sutton 17 and not pay Brandon Ayuk? That was, I like Sutton. I'm a big Sutton fan, but I've already got Ayuk there. Yeah. And if I'm going to take on Sutton's $13 million contract, base salary, or why wouldn't I just pay Brandon Ayuk some money?
I mean, it probably says to what wide receiver money Ayuk's going to get, right? The wide receiver market has been unbelievable. I mean, it's probably the second or third. It's pushing up there with edge rusher, Scott, as far as the highest paid positions right now. And you have guys making 30+ million a year. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 guys are making 25 million or more a season. And Ayuk's probably going to be pushing 30, I think. So that's a little different than Sutton.
And the Steelers going to do that? I mean, they're the ones that they've got a deal in place and a contract.
They must be. I mean, they must, which is kind of weird because that's a team that's drafted wide receivers pretty well, but not a true, superstar number one there for a bit. So since Antonio Brown, but we'll see. I would not move on from Sutton personally, unless you're getting back a 3rd round pick, I guess, and shedding a bunch of that money as well. Even then, I don't know. I like the certainty of a top 25 wide receiver in this offense. Donald Willison comes in and says, good morning, everyone. Jermaine says we should go after Hassan Reddick. Reddick's good. The thing about Denver is that I think they need like a superstar number one pass rusher on the defensive line. And I think Reddick's very good, but he was very good on an Eagles defense that was like crazy depth. I don't think he's like a top 10 edge rusher in football. I don't want to pay him a top 10 money. I think we are on the hunt for an edge rusher, but I think it's more of a top draft pick next season compared to a veteran who's entering year 8, 9 in the NFL and would need a big contract with it. So I'm honestly, for where this team is at this season, for how I perceive them, your Browning, Cooper, Benito, Ellis, I'm comfortable with that in the short term perspective.
Nick, they fell off a lot in 23, and Hassan
Eagles
still put up decent numbers. So they went in 23. The Eagles had 43 sacks. Now, do you remember what that number was in 22?
It was like 72 or something.
It was 70.
Yeah, insane.
I mean,
of course,
they fell off almost an entire team's worth of sacks.
Yeah, defense is so volatile. I mean, that's just, you look at these stats like, oh, they're going to repeat it again. Safe bet is they're not. But yeah,
Nick, you know what else is volatile?
Cell phone
mobile charges. Mobile charges can be volatile. With big wireless providers, what you see is what you get. Somewhere between the store and your first month's bill, the price you thought you were paying magically skyrockets. Volatile. With Mint Mobile, you'll never have to worry about gotchas ever again. When Mint Mobile says $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan, they mean it. So bye-bye to overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overage.
To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/huddle. Again, that's mintmobile.com/huddle. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/huddle. 45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
It's nice not having that volatility. You like to know what you're going to get when you're talking about these players and the defense. You're not quite sure. Go from 70 to 43 sacks. I mean, we talk about the Eagles, right? How many sacks did the Broncos have last year? 42.
No, not great.
Who would have guessed? How many people on here? I wouldn't have. And we do this constantly. We know the Broncos every day. Would have guessed the Broncos had one less sack than the Eagles last year.
I mean, shout out to Rich Gannon, or not Rich Gannon, whatever first name is out there, the head coach for Arizona, who Denver was, interviewed and whatnot as well. He's had some kind of weird locker room stuff a year ago. People kind of roasted him, but he seems to be a pretty good coach out there in Arizona. Defensive minded, though. We'll see how that lasts. Shiloh comes in and says, "Sup, everyone. Our edge, depth, and linebacker seemingly going to depend a ton on special teams. Any big wins or losses from preseason game. I'm hoping Level would make a splash play on defense." Yeah, I think just to topic of the show today, surprise cuts, areas of weakness that Denver might go outside the organization. I think just watching the Broncos play, looking at the depth chart, and just the availability of kind of players that you can get out there. Like, you're not going to be able to get a starting edge without paying a crazy price with like draft picks and capital, but you might be able to find a second string linebacker that could help you a lot. And linebacker to me is one that, while it's a position I think that's easy to find competency year over year, there's always guys available in the draft and free agency. And it's something that's I think it's just a 2024 problem right now, but I was not impressed with Jonas Griffith at all. He might have been the worst player on the field that I was expecting things from this season as far as the Broncos contributors, if that makes sense. Like, there are some guys who didn't play well, but further down. But Griffith, I thought, really struggled. Barton was okay, especially in coverage, but the run fits were concerning. I don't want to use the S word on him, but a little bit more of a finesse guy. But Griffith scared me a lot, and I just wasn't super impressed with the linebackers behind them either. Stranad, I thought that Bailey was okay out there as well, but Bailey's one I think that actually might be out there. And Griffith, with his contract, he could probably be replace if they had to, save a little bit of, I'm not sure exactly what the contract is. I know he was listed as one of the or starters there, but I thought he played poor enough that there should be not forget the starting spot being guaranteed. I don't know if a roster spot should be guaranteed unless he's dominating on special teams. And I'll admit, I did not focus on Jonas Griffith's special teams impact in the preseason game.
I think Jonas is still on a futures contract.
They signed him to something pretty cheap
in the offseason, but he's on the 2024 depth chart is on Spot Racket / at 985.
Yeah.
So I think he's on like a veteran minimum futures type deal. But it's just under $1 million. I won't guarantee, but my thought is it's probably non-guaranteed.
Yeah.
So what is guaranteed is Michael Ranquillo coming in for us. Appreciate you, Michael. He says, good morning, Nick and Scott on Broncos for breakfast. Good morning to you as well. And he says, go Broncos. And Rob Bucksbaum coming in. He says, morning, gents. The best MHH team. Hopefully we might get to see you at the meet and greet. That's coming up quick. I mean, when you do it in week 2, we're a month away. It's a month away. So September 15th, today's August 14th. We're a month from heading to Denver. And for some reason, coming out of the Southeast, I can get to Denver dirt cheap. I used to pay more money to get into Manhattan to go to work every day than it cost me to fly into Denver. I'm pretty stoked. So I'm looking forward to that. But he says, missed the last few weeks, moved to North Carolina, honeymoon, new job. Awesome. Been busy, Rob. But back now, Franklin seems quiet. Your thoughts on Troy Franklin?
Roster spot's not guaranteed. Especially considering he's the 4th or 5th wide receiver, there has to be special teams impact. And given his style of play, his frame, he's not out there making open field tackles as a core 4 member. So his spot is not guaranteed. Now, Denver did make an investment trading up to go get him. Early 4th round pick, I believe the 2nd overall 4th round pick this year. But yeah, it's just he's not as versatile, and I don't see as many pathways to playing time / impact. So we'll see. Again, a lot of it depends on, I don't think it's going to happen, but like what a trickle down effect could happen if Sutton was moved on. That just changes the dynamic of the room completely. But right now, I think that Franklin is fighting for a spot on the 53. And he was one that was enough of a high investment that if Denver did waive him, I'm not sure he would make it through waivers and fall his way back to the practice squad. But yeah, he's reportedly been up and down in camp, and one that, again, not much of an impact in the preseason game as well.
That would be a tough one to swallow, Nick.
I think Sean Payton's one who would swallow.
Basically, I'm flushing 2 4th rounders down the toilet before I even take a snap in a regular season game.
Oof. Sometimes you got to make that tough call like that. I mean, that happens. It's hard, but let's say Vele has been much more impressive special teams ability as well. You can make a misevaluation. You don't want to make a misevaluation twice.
Yeah, don't throw good money after bad, something like that, or double down on a bad investment. I don't know. If you know, you know. I mean, they're operating with more. You would just like to think, because it has to be more than just ability, because you don't just go from, okay, we're going to trade 2 4th round draft picks to get you, to we don't want you over the course of a training camp based on a talent evaluation. There's got to be some more in there. We had no idea your attitude stunk, something along those lines. You don't just miss that badly on a 4th round pick where you're trading up at that point, where you're so in love with a guy to trade up for him in the 4th to cut him before you even take a regular season snap. There's more going on there, Nick.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, not to beat a dead horse, but the special team stuff, like, it matters so much.
You knew that beforehand, though. Again, those are things you already know.
Yeah. But because of that, just your pathways, like, he needed to work his way up to like being wide receiver 4. And right now, I mean, he's obviously not that guy. So I don't know. We'll see what happens here. The other thing is, we talked about it last night on building the Broncos, but I think this is a team that's probably going to keep, 4 or 5 running backs if you include the fullback in there. They like to use a lot of 12 personnel, so they're probably not just going to keep only 3 tight ends, right? That seems I mean, the tight end position on the roster is not very good. So maybe that's another one like linebacker. You're looking outside, seeing what happens when teams cut down. But I just don't see them keeping, 6, 7 wide receivers also. So the math ain't mathin'. We'll see what happens. Keith Brugman says, Nick, saying it so, are you baby Gaga over Bo Nix already? Talk to me about your analysis of preseason game 1. See, I love this because some people say I'm a hater. Some people say I'm goo goo gaga. I give him an A minus for that first game. It wasn't perfect by any means, but I felt like he overall protected the football. The synergy between him and Sean Payton in the offense was good. And I thought he calmed down a lot after that first drive. Now, was it perfect? No, there was some throws because of his footwork and his pocket presence where he was a little bit frantic, frenetic. Is that the word? Just a little bit, kind of like off kilter where he didn't, frantic, where he didn't need to be. He put himself in poor mechanical situations when it wasn't called upon. Now, sometimes you see that stuff. It's young quarterback-esque, is a little bit like Auburn Bo Nix, where, that first third, the only third and long they converted, where he on that, I think it was the first drive where he ditched the pocket and made a great throw to Cortland Sutton on the sideline. That's the good, of the chaos and a little bit of the franticness. But then there was plays, the first pass of the game. There was another one where he turfed it on the left hash mark as well, where he had time in the pocket. You're putting yourself in a bad spot mechanically, and you lose accuracy, strength on the throw as well because of that. So it's stuff he needs to work on. I think it was also, if you listen to the shows, Keith, coming in, like, what is a successful output for Bo Nix in that first preseason game? Getting the plays in on time, running the offense, looking comfortable, making the right reads, just keeping play, not taking bad sacks, constant bad throws. I feel like he didn't do that. So the bar was pretty low for me coming in on this one as well. I wasn't expecting him to come out and be, perfect mechanical quarterback, but the mechanic stuff was and is a concern. It was a question coming out of Oregon as well because of the style of offense they played. He didn't really have to hang in the pocket and always rely on those mechanics, right? He could just find a check down super easy. It's one reason I was a little bit skeptical of his PFF numbers under pressure. It's like, well, I mean, that's what he was asked to do is not really NFL-esque or translatable, in my opinion. But I think overall he had a good game and something that you should be more excited about with his floor than hating on.
He was, just real quick, he was better than I was expecting. As far as the command of the offense, to come in, the poise, those are the kind of things I was looking for. And it looked like it was week 15 instead of preseason game 1. His command out there was veteran-esque, which is what you're hoping when you're getting a guy who's 24 years old and has the most career starts ever. He looked like he belonged. That was all very good. So analysis of game 1, again, I'd give him an A. You can only beat the guys that are put in front of you. You also were going against 2s and 3s of the Indianapolis Colts. Week 1 will be a very different story. Mm-hmm. So, are we ready to say, okay, rookie of the year? No. There was a question this week, about the other rookie quarterbacks. Pretty much now, with the exception of Jay McCarthy with a torn meniscus, every single fan base was pretty happy with their rookie quarterbacks, all 6 of them. That was pretty universal. So you're on a level playing field here. Now let's go to the next step. You pass the first hurdle. Let's get to the next one. The first real hurdle is when we see, because Bo Nix should start week 1, is when you're facing live bullets for a team that's actually trying to beat you and not just evaluate the back end of their roster.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give a shout out too. I thought Rattler looked pretty good out there. That arm's live. But no, yeah,
Joe Milton looked good.
Yes, he did. Yeah, but as far as baby Gaga, he answered the questions. I said this on Monday. It's a pop quiz, because the sample size is so small and you're not going against 1s and 2s. And also, Scott, I can't think of an NFL game I've watched where the coverage has been so soft. It was like 12 yards off every time for a quarterback and an offensive mind who wants to work the quick game. Hello, just check down, short pass, ball out quickly. That's what you want to do against that kind of coverage. Now, it's going to be a lot different against, Mike McDonald and the Seahawks week 1. I mean, heck, even the Packers coming up here week 2, preseason week 2, it's going to be a lot different. So He
Well,
answered the questions that were asked, but you didn't have every question asked.
right. Again, you can only beat the guys they put in front of you. Well, I haven't beaten anybody. Well, what do you expect me to do? He was better than I was expecting, and I would absolutely give him an A for his first showing as a Denver Bronco. A for Bo Nix, no doubt in my mind. He looked like he belonged. That's all he could have done. He did everything that was asked for him, and he did it well. Those are good things. Concerns. If we weren't talking about Bo Nix, we'd be talking about probably the defense, Nick.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we talk about, okay, how good did Bo Nix look? Well, how bad did the Broncos defense look? You know, going against they call it actually Indianapolis Colts, they call him Mr. August because he's got like 103 quarterback rating in the preseason as Sam Ehlinger. But you giving up 30 points in the preseason. There's only one other, I think there was one other, maybe two other teams that scored 30 plus, and two of them did it in this game. So the defense is still a concern. And it goes to, okay, Bo Nix was great. Look at how many points they put up against 2s and 3s. Well, crap. Well, it was just our 2s and 3s that we're playing, and we didn't really show much on defense. Okay, well, can they say the same thing then? You know, am I willing to just ignore that part of it for my evaluation of Bo Nix, or should I be concerned about this Broncos defense? Frankly, for me, it's the latter. I'm a little concerned about this Broncos defense, Nick.
Yeah, to be fair, and it's so hard to make grand sweeping conclusions from preseason, but the wheels really fell off the defense after the start. The starters that were playing came out, and it's something, we talked about the lack of draft picks, the lack of money, the depth of the defenses.
But you rotate on defense.
That's true. Yep.
You rotate on defense.
Yeah. More so on the defensive line.
Mm-hmm.
And you were already playing a lot of backups on the defensive line to begin with, since, Allen wasn't playing, John Franklin Myers
But that's
wasn't
kind of
playing.
my point.
Yeah.
So were the Colts.
Yes.
And so were the Colts. So before I go say, okay, Bo Nix is just absolutely the man, I have to recognize the fact that Indianapolis Colts played less of their starters than the Broncos did, and the Broncos got lit up too.
Yeah. Yeah, the safety and linebacker positions specifically I thought was pretty poor. I mean, for all the, talk of PJ Locke, I thought he didn't have a great game. Some out there from JL Skinner, but I mean, your just depth there is not very good. I did think that Mathis/Moss handled themselves pretty well, and Chris Abrams-Drain also had an okay time. We're talking about the surprise cuts and guys might be on the outside looking in. I mean, if you have all three of those young guys stepping up, maybe you're moving on from that veteran there. Levi Wallace, I mean, it sounds like it's been a Wallace or Moss in camp based on observers, but we saw the first depth chart come out, and it's Moss/Mathis listed one. And who's out there running first against the Colts? It's Mathis. So maybe Levi Wallace, especially if Chris Abrams-Drain, who had good in coverage, not great in run defense, but maybe he's somebody that can kick Levi Wallace out, so you go a little bit younger, cheaper, longer cost control. So again, talking backup cornerbacks here, but that's one that maybe could be a surprise cut as well, because just 2 weeks ago we were talking about him being the potential starter.
Yeah, and maybe he sat out with Brandon Jones and Pat Surtain because he is the starter.
Maybe.
Troy Boer says, what do we save if we're in a position to cut Samaje Perine and Jarrett Stidham? $8 million total. It's $5 million on Stidham's contract, and it's $3 million on Perine. So you save $8 million straight up on a straight up cut. No pick swaps, no trades, no nothing. $8 million.
That'd be pretty good. I mean, that's a player, a good player.
We talked about it last week, Nick. The Broncos have 11 players whose cap number is $5 million or higher. That's it. So when you're talking $5 million, it's only $5 million. That's the 12th player, highest paid player on your team. Would be 4,999,000, et cetera, would be the 12th highest player on your team. So therefore, you're penciling him in as a middle of the pack starter for your team. $8 million can be a lot of money if used wisely, especially in non-premium positions, Nick.
Yeah. Yeah, without a doubt. So we talked about Troy Franklin, somebody being potentially out. Also talked Cortland Sutton's an interesting one. P Ryan was the other one in here now. What I will be watching for in this next game is if you have Audric Estime or Jaleel McLaughlin or Watson get a crack with that first team in those third and medium to long pass back. We didn't see that in the limited sample size against the Colts. It was P. Ryan's job, but he buffaloed it with that bobbled interception out there. So granted, one play happens versus the whole sample of training camp and OTAs and everything. So we're on watch there, but P. Ryan's definitely one whose stock went down, and his spot's been questionable to begin with. Amplify that questionability with a play like that.
Based on all the guys that got carries, the one I would keep based on what we saw in the preseason game would be Jaleel McLaughlin. I thought he was the best looking running back out there.
I thought there was some good from Javonte Williams as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, McLaughlin looks, I was loving the between the tackles runs. He's definitely has a different gear than the other running backs.
He hits it so hard.
Yeah.
He's to the line. It's like, okay, there's only an opening for just a moment for making a hole. He hits it. If you're not moving the pile, and Audric Estime, he's awesome. Wasn't getting to the hole, and he wasn't moving the pile either in short yardage situations. Jaleel was getting there. He was getting there before the hole could close. And so the between the tackle stuff, we know what he can do in space, but I thought Jaleel looked great.
Yeah, the real question with Jaleel is it's always going to come down to the pass protection, because if you're the third down back, it's non-negotiable for me. You have to make an impact as a pass protector, and McLaughlin last year was horrible there. It was one reason that Philip Lindsay didn't really last in the league so long. It's like, why isn't he the third down back? He's fast. He can't hang up in one-on-one blocking situations, and he's also not a very good natural receiver in space. So if McLaughlin can add that receiver aspect, which they've been talk of that, there's a little bit more of a path, but still, especially the rookie quarterback and how teams are using simulated pressures, your running back in those packages has to be able to sit there and anchor and take on a free rusher. So we'll see there with that spot. Other than that, looking at the roster as well, guys, nothing too shocking here for the roster. I would say we talked about Jonas Griffith already. Maybe your guys like Thomas Incoom or further down, one of those guys doesn't make the roster. We talk about him. I feel like we're a little full at edge with those four young guys. It's really hard to pick, surprises on the defensive side, because a lot of the names on that second and third team are who's that kind of names, unfortunately.
I think one of the surprises already happened.
Yeah.
Caden Stearns.
Yeah.
That was, unless you're talking about, okay, and now we know, why did this happen? Because it's surprising when he's cut. He's out there practicing. Okay, he's got some work to do. We know that. Sean Payton acknowledged that. But then when he goes and gets cut, it's like, okay, it's a little bit of an eye-opener. He gets picked up, signed right away, and cut again for failing a physical. You're like, oh, okay.
There it is.
Okay. But we don't have that information beforehand, so we're a little surprised. So of the surprise cuts, one of them's already happened, Nick, and it was Caden Stearns.
Yep. And just looking over the roster, the last one who is in discussion here, I don't know if it would be a surprise, so to speak, but it probably is Jarrett Stidham. And that has to do with it. I don't think Stidham played horribly. There's kind of a growing a contingent that like really freaking hates Stidham on Twitter. It's almost kind of like Teddy Bridgewater to Drew Lock kind of situation where they hate him because he's a threat to the young guy, which he's not. It's going to go to Bo Nix eventually here, whether it's week 1 or week 5. But Stidham, with the way his contract is set up, and also with how good Zach Wilson looked, and again against 3s and 4s, but he looked pretty solid out there in the reps that he was given. I know he's been struggling some in camp, but we're not boots on the ground there every day. What we can go off is the preseason there, and he looked pretty good. So Stidham's another one, just the money savings and everything that you could move on from. Now, granted, with the new rule that's in place where your third quarterback doesn't count against your game day active roster, it's strategically beneficial to keep 3 quarterbacks. But we'll see what happens. Stidham's another one who could be a surprise.
That's not how it works.
No?
I've looked this up again because we had this conversation the other day.
How does it work?
It works. If you elevate a practice squad quarterback, he does not count across your active 48.
It's that way. Okay,
It's
it's
that
not
way. It's not. It has nothing to do with the 53. You are
okay.
able to have unlimited practice squad elevations of your quarterback, but he has to count as one of the two. That means you can only elevate one other player.
Mhm.
It does not count for your active 48. So he can be the
Okay, excuse me.
49th player, and you can do it unlimited times, but you have to cut them to get them to the practice squad.
Okay.
That's how it's working. So it doesn't have anything to do with the 53.
All right. Well, that is interesting. I thought it had to do with the not being because you can't only activate so many players. It's the elevation aspect from the practice squad.
It's the game day active is how it works. Because before they could be the 49th player, but they had to be on your 53.
Yeah. Sorry, I just started
Now
blocking Miguel because I've seen him come in like 3 or 4 shows now where he says the Broncos suck. So
okay.
goodbye, Miguel.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not watching the live chat nearly as closely. It's the practice squad. You are allowed to have unlimited elevations. You're allowed to elevate 2 players a week, so it has to count as one of those 2 guys, and it would be your 49th active player on game day. That's how the new rule works. So, in order for your third quarterback, you'll have to cut them first.
Yeah.
And how big of would someone pick up Jarrett Stidham? I don't think anybody would claim. I mean, you'd have to re-sign him anyway. Nobody's claiming him on waivers on that contract because they'd owe him $7 million. Zach Wilson, maybe. But you'd have to. Everybody on your practice squad is a free agent, is what people kind of figure. Oh, we need to just put them on the practice squad. It doesn't quite work as easily as just put them on the practice squad. You have to cut them to get them to the practice squad. And then when they're on the practice squad, they're basically free agents.
Makes sense. That is okay. Well, that changes the math a little bit.
I read through it 3 times on Monday night, and I'm like, that's what I came up with. As confusing as it is, and I could end up being wrong. And if I am, just say in the comments and show me where I'm wrong, and I'll be happy to admit it. But the way I read it over several times was the new amendment to the 2023 rule in 2024. You're allowed to elevate a practice squad quarterback infinite times, because normally you can only do it 3 times before you have to either sign them or cut them. Practice squad player, which means he would get a game day check. So he'd get the game day check for that week, which is a veteran minimum, which would end up being about $75,000 instead of 10. So it matters, but that's what it is.
Well, in that case, it's a Jarrett Stidham, Zach Wilson conversation. I think you probably risk Zach Wilson to the practice squad if based on what we've seen in camp.
That's funny. I was thinking exactly the opposite.
You think you risk
cut Stidham and take the $5 million?
I think that you want that veteran in the room with the young quarterback there, where Zach Wilson needs his own attention.
Zach Wilson's got more starts than Jarrett Stidham by a factor of 9. He's got almost 10 times as many starts as Jarrett Stidham does.
I think Jarrett Stidham's tutelage has been better.
Just because he's more experienced doesn't mean he's more experienced. Doesn't mean he's learned anything.
Yeah, working under McDaniel and then McDaniels. Excuse me, I always get those two.
What it comes down to, Nick, though, is all right. Bo Nix is out. Is the difference between Jarrett Stidham and Zach Wilson the difference between me making the playoffs or not?
It could be.
No. Nick, no.
Probably not.
Are you making the playoffs with Jarrett Stidham as your quarterback for 17 games this year?
No. I thought you were talking about 1 or 2 games.
No, I'm talking about Bo Nix is out. So the difference between the quarterbacks is relatively negligible, because if Bo Nix doesn't become a plus, an average to plus starter in this league, you're not making the playoffs. Well, Jarrett Stidham isn't one of those guys. He's not a top 15 quarterback, average to plus. And Zach Wilson's been really bad. So give me the $5 million, because the difference between the two isn't the difference in your season.
And I look at it a little differently. And we're normally on the same page, which is good. But I think that Stidham is probably a little bit more beneficial to the room, going through things, an extra coach essentially in there. And I don't think about it as if Bo Nix is out for the whole year, who has a better chance? I look at it as, let's say Bo Nix misses 2 games. Who do I trust more to split those 2 games? Zach Wilson or Jarrett Stidham? I probably trust Jarrett Stidham more. Now that's based on what, right? 4 starts out there, but he's been in here 2 seasons. The way Sean Payton talks about him, it sounds like there's more trust there. It sounds like there's more trust there and synergy with Webb as well, the quarterback coach, which maybe is going to be the guy who has the final call there as well. And I think it's probably, I don't think it's going to be hard to get Zach Wilson on the practice squad. Who knows though? Right. It's crazy, but we'll see.
And I don't think it's hard to get what Jarrett Stidham brings you.
Yeah.
For $5 million.
I think that's hard to do at this point in the offseason with the implementation of the offense and how much Sean Payton demands mentally of the quarterbacks. It could have been done back in July, but
I don't see the value in what it boils down to is I don't see the value in Zach Wilson is dirt cheap. So you're getting what you pay for. I don't see the value in Jarrett Stidham for $5 million. I think you're overpaying. Why? And I don't need to overpay for a backup quarterback. That's for me.
Yeah, I hear you. As far as other guys who might be surprisingly out as we wrap up the show here very soon, is there anybody in the offensive line? I thought Throckmorton looked okay. I really liked what Jacobs did at the third string left tackle. Starters I thought were pretty good. Is Alex Forsyth at risk of being practice squadded because he's only a center, so to speak?
I thought of him, but you normally keep 2.
But normally, again, is a guy who can do.
Yeah, normally
2.
a guy will like Wattenberg. You'd keep Wattenberg because Wattenberg can play center or guard.
Yeah.
Who's your backup center then? Do you trust Mustafa to be able to play center guard? Does he make the team?
Maybe. I think.
But I thought of Forsyth. I'm like, I think he'd be pretty safe as a backup center.
Yeah, it's just the versatility there. Although if an injury happens, maybe you're moving Wattenberg to guard and Forsyth is the center then. But maybe you don't want to mess with that center exchange as well. It's the offensive line depth. I thought they held themselves admirably against the Colts, especially in the run game. But there's still questions about how it all fits together. BLD coming in here said, who do you think will be the starting quarterback opposite PS2? Right now, based on what I've heard and what I saw, I think it'll be Moss, but Mathis is still there.
So is Levi Wallace.
Yeah.
Levi Wallace is still there. I think you're hoping it's Riley Moss. That's the one that has, typically the guys that get draft highest have the most upside. That's why they get draft highest. You're hoping a guy reaches the potential you saw in him when you drafted him high. But it wouldn't surprise me to see week 1, Levi Wallace out there.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. And thank you so much for the comment there, BLD. And we're going to get on out of here. Appreciate everyone coming in. Make sure you're following Scott on Twitter. Scott is at Scout Kennedy. I'm at Nick Kendall, MHH. Also follow us at Mile High Huddle. If you're over on Facebook, follow us at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod. And as that ticker says there underneath, please subscribe, like, and share. Shout out to our star givers today, Michael Ronquillo, Rob Bucksbaum. Congrats on the marriage and the honeymoon and the move, Rob. Keith coming in, Troy, of course, as well, and BLD. Talked about it. I mean, linebacker, safety, backup quarterback. Some questions there. We didn't talk about the defensive line as well. They're probably going to have to make some tough decisions on the interior defensive line, but hopefully we'll get a better idea this week because I think you'll probably see Allen and John Franklin Myers, and then who is left out. I mean, Roach looked good. DJ Jones was okay out there. Blackson had a lot of reps. I wasn't really impressed with him by any means, but he's the only one who's like that.
Get a 53 spot?
I don't know. That's apparently he's looked good in limited action, but I don't know.
Real limited because he wasn't even on the same field with the guys. He's over training with the youth squad, soccer term, trying to get up to speed. I would think he would be a guy you could sneak through to the practice squad. I mean, who's grabbing him? I mean, he was a 5th round draft pick to begin with, and he's been out for a year. 4th round. He was a day 3 pick to begin with. So when people had the chance to take him early, they passed.
Yep.
And he hasn't been playing for a year, and he's got some baggage.
Yeah. He's one that might sneak through to practice squad as well, but always looking for depth and rotational bodies with size and length on the defensive line, and he has that. So Michael coming in, closing us out. Sunset to the sunrise to sunset. Says, great show today, Nick and Scott on Broncos for breakfast. Go Broncos. Thank you so much, Michael. Thanks, everybody. We will see you again, hopefully for another Victory Monday here. And have a great one, guys. Have a great week. Choose compassion and kindness. Go Broncos.